Coffee is for leaders.
And I didn't realize it, but what that meant was every investor in the room would want to talk to me, because investors are like buffalo, right? They all stand at the edge of the cliff, and once one falls off to their death, they all follow suit. And that if you've raised more than 100% of what you've tried to raise, obviously something's great about you, so everybody else follows suit. So we ended up taking that raise to 1.65 million.
Michael, thank you for joining us. You are the co-founder and CEO of Vidyard. You've been that since 2011, a rarity in tech, over a decade, which is incredible. Give us a sense for Vidyard, how you came to be the co-founder and CEO.
Yeah, for sure. I'll try to give you the very brief version of the story, because it can be pretty long. I'm a University of Waterloo grad from a program called Systems Design Engineering. And the cool thing about the University of Waterloo is when you are in that program, anything you come up with in terms of an innovation, company, et cetera, the university does not take any IP in that business. And so it encourages entrepreneurship. Yeah, because you do school, the way the co-op program works is you do 4 months of school, 4 months of work, all the way through your 5-year undergrad. And so you get 7 work terms. And a lot of my peers, and you go work at companies in Silicon Valley. When I was an intern, BlackBerry was kind of a very desirable place to go work for. And when you're in these businesses, you see the inefficiencies of the way these companies work, and you realize that you have the skills, or you're developing the skills to solve those problems. And so it creates this wave of entrepreneurs and this kind of experience. And because you're going back to school, there's a finite end to each of your work terms. And then as soon as you get back in your school term, you start thinking about your next work term. And what that does is it drives a lot of us to start thinking about maybe starting our own company. At the very end of that program, I was given an opportunity to do something called e-co-op, where I was essentially self-employed as an entrepreneur. The city I'm in, City of Kitchener, had a $500 summer company grant. And that's what I used to start the business. And we started with something really simple. It was this idea that all the companies we worked for during undergrad were trying to figure out how to explain their product, their service, et cetera, through video. And that was for the purposes of marketing their product or service, but also for helping existing customers understand how to use it better. And my co-founder, Devin, and I were like, we're technical. We know how this stuff works, but we also know how to make video. Wind the clock a little bit. I was the video kid. I almost had a big camcorder on my shoulder. My Uncle John gave me one. I'd go to all the family events. I got into freestyle skiing, and I wasn't the most talented, so I was almost the kid behind the camera, editing videos. And then when I got into undergrad, I would create videos to explain our design projects, et cetera. So had the skill set. Fast forward to the end of school, end of undergrad, it basically went back to all of our employers and said, hey, I can do this work that you're trying to do, create these videos for you at a fraction of the cost. And the idea that Devin and I had was, we could do 4 to 5, pretty big engagements per year, make $300K, across the two of us, and live happily ever after. And I mean, at this point in time, we're interns, like living on couches and stuff, right? Pretty good at that level. And so that's exactly what we did. We started making videos. Very quickly, all the companies that we deliver video for were like, how do we put this thing on our website? How do we justify the spend with you guys, aka the ROI? So we started building that technology. We built an HTML5 video player that they could embed on their website that looked and felt like their brand. We started tracking who was watching and for how long. And then a roommate of mine, a guy named Eric Mijakovsky, he was the creator of the first smartwatch, the Impulse smartwatch. It was the highest grossing Kickstarter of all time back in the day. He left Waterloo, went to this thing in Silicon Valley called Y Combinator, and said, Mike, you gotta apply. You gotta check it out. Paul Graham and these guys are like really, really incredible. And Silicon Valley is the place to start a company. So we applied, we got the interview, walked into the interview. It was Paul Graham, Sam Altman, and Gary Tan. And, Gary Tan is now the CEO of YC. Sam Altman, everybody knows who he is, OpenAI. This is when he was running a company called Looped, a Sequoia-backed company. And basically, we told them, we're building YouTube for business. We're helping companies put videos on their website, understand who's watching for how long. And I said, but you guys knew that because you watched the video. And they're like, oh, yeah. And then I turned my iPad around and I had their view sessions from our dashboard. And I was like, no, you didn't. And they're like, okay, we get it. We understand the value. So YC funded us. And the first thing they said was stop producing video content, start just building the technology. There's a lot of businesses that have this problem. There's a lot of video production agencies you can work with. So that was in 2011. The reason I'm the CEO of Vidyard and not the CTO or any other role is because when Paul Graham asked his questions, I was the one who answered. And so when he asked, he said, which one of you is the CEO? And Devin and I looked at each other. We didn't know. He said, Mike, you're going to be the CEO because you're the one who asked the questions. You're going to be the sales guy. You're going to be the fundraiser. You're going to be all those things. So I never desired to be a CEO. It wasn't something I wanted to do. It just happened by, I guess, chance and the personalities involved. And, Devin and I have built a longstanding, really powerful working dynamic. We do lots of stuff together. He's one of my best friends in the world. And I feel very fortunate to be building this with him today.
That's incredible, man. What did you learn at Y Combinator? Like during those 3 months, for those who don't know, it's like this 3-month boot camp for startups. They take a little equity, they give you a little bit of money, but really the value seems to be the network that they've created. Paul has created, when Sam ran it and now Gary. It's interesting. You had like the 3 people who run it.
I know.
Or, I think those are the only 3 people who've run it, right?
Yeah, Michael Siebel, I think, had a stint there.
Oh, you're right, Siebel. I forgot about him.
Yeah.
So you had these 3 kind of like giants, and maybe they weren't necessarily giants at that time, right? What did you learn from them? What did you learn just from the overall experience and being there for 3 months?
Yeah, so I think there's like 2 components of who I am, right? I'm a founder and I'm a CEO, and I don't really think I became a CEO until we had raised our, Series B, Series C, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. Back then, I was just a co-founder. And the thing that YC does a really good job of is it isolates the important work from the busy work. And when you're starting a company, you get incorporated, you build your employment agreements, you get your business number, all that stuff takes a lot of time. And in the end of the day, you can reflect on your day and be like, yeah, I had a really productive day. I did all this important work. But it had nothing to do with building product or talking to customers. And that's really the only thing that matters. And something that YC taught me that is core to how I operate today. The only 2 things that matter are you building great, powerful, transformational products for users? And when you join YC, they give you a great t-shirt that says, make something people want. And when you sell the company or IPO, they give you a black t-shirt that says, I made something people want. And the transformational aspect of YC for me was going to Silicon Valley, being from Waterloo and leaving my friends and family back in Waterloo and having 3 months of just dedicated energy applied to building product and talking to users. And every time I'd get together with Paul Graham, he was like, what's your most important metric? We had product in market. So I'd say MRR. And he would say, your goal is to grow MRR by 10% per week. Figure out how to do that. Reverse engineer that process. And that is exactly the conversation we had every week for 3 months. And he held me accountable to that. And I held myself and my team accountable to that. So that totally defined the way we worked and the energy we applied to the business. So it was transformational for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's and so you come out of there. Did you raise at demo day? Like, give us a sense for like how you started raising after that.
Yeah, so it's funny because now I invest through a fund called Garage Capital, but I also started with Devin. And the YC game has changed completely. But back then, it was very uncommon to raise money before demo day. Now most YC companies have completed their fundraise by demo day, right? It's just everybody wants to get in. Everybody just wants to build an index of YC companies. But back then, we were building product, talking to users, and Paul Graham liked to use us as the example of the company that was actively running a sales process. And so because of that, I got introduced to a number of potential funds and customers. And the YC partners liked what we were doing and liked the hustle, so to speak. Because, YC is very much a hacker-oriented mentality. And again, we're all engineers at Vidyard, like that's our background. But because we started a services business, we knew how to sell, and we were using the services business to fund the software development business. So, I had no problem putting myself out there and getting these deals done. That means I got to meet David Lee from SV Angel and Ron Conway and, Yawed Kareem, one of the co-founders of YouTube. And so by the time we got to demo day, I wanted to raise $850,000 in our seed. We had more than that committed and signed up on our convertible note. So I got up at demo day and said, hey, we're raising 800 and we've already closed 850. And I didn't realize it, but what that meant was every investor in the room would want to talk to me, because investors are like buffalo, right? They all stand at the edge of the cliff, and once one falls off to their death, they all follow suit. And if you've raised more than 100% of what you've tried to raise, obviously something's great about you, so everybody else follows suit. So we ended up taking that raise to 1.65 million, and we just kind of escalated the cap to manage dilution as more investors came on. And I'm very grateful we did, because we raised our Series A when we had about 800K left in the bank, meaning if we had raised what we originally targeted to do, we would have ran out of cash.
Yeah.
So there's all these inflection points that you reflect on. But the biggest investor in that round ended up being a gentleman named Jeff Clavier, who's been awesome. He was Soft Tech VC, now branded Encore Capital. And just a really great crew of investors that have been very supportive along the journey.
How has the product evolved? As video obviously has evolved insanely since 2011, right? Give us a sense for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? The big innovation that we initially came to market with was, back in the day, your listeners will probably remember this. The best way to deliver video on the internet was Flash. That was what YouTube built, right? You could upload a video, and you needed the Flash content installed in your machines that would function. And then Steve Jobs said, Flash is garbage. Let's get rid of it and let's migrate to the HTML5 standard. And so one of our earliest innovations was we had a free HTML5 player. So we could tell customers this content's going to play on iPads and iPhones, and this is the future. It sounds ridiculous to say this now, but all of the competition was charging extra for the HTML5 capabilities. And, it was a few lines of code. But when we built that product, we were trying to figure out how to serve video via HTML5. The only companies that were doing it were streaming porn websites. And so
they're always ahead of the game on innovation,
especially with respect to video. Seems to be the way. So that was the initial innovation. And then it was like, who's watching these videos for how long? And then it was, how do we integrate that data into these modern marketing automation systems like Marketo and Eloqua, and then HubSpot, Pardot came along, and then there was consolidation there. And then we got this idea of, how do we help the marketing teams we work with enrich the salespeople's experience? And, marketing works for sales and vice versa, and they never get along. And a really awesome investor named Jill Rowley, she was the highest grossing sales rep at Eloqua and loved what we were doing. She said, if you can connect the dots between sales and marketing, you will never have churn. So we started experimenting with product there. And the idea was, how do we give these videos that the marketers have uploaded to our system to salespeople so that they can easily send them to customers? And that's just another channel of delivery for these videos, who's watching it for how long, but in their workflow, in their email, in CRM. And then one day a BDR in our business was playing around with this idea of just sending a webcam video to a customer, to a prospect, and say, hey, it's me, Mike, Clint. I'm really excited about what you're working on. I'd love to book some time to talk about XYZ. And what he was doing was he was opening QuickTime, recording with his built-in webcam, and then uploading that video to Vidyard, and then taking an image from that video, embedding it in the email, then hyperlinking it to the video, and then sitting on the sharing or the analytics dashboard and waiting for the counter to go from 0 to 1 and then following up. And we're like, wait a minute, we can build that entire workflow into a Chrome extension that allows a sales rep the ability of, click record, screen capture, or webcam capture with the backend infrastructure we've already built of who's watching my video for how long, the branded sharing page, the call to action capability, all that stuff. And that's when we entered into this realm of PLG and helping the sales rep. And of course, that timing aligned really nicely with the pandemic. everybody was starting to work from home. Video became the primary communication method. There was no more in person. And so that was almost like the next chapter of our business. We'd been selling to marketers, very top down, enterprise focused process. Now, all of a sudden, we were selling to sales reps. They could buy it on their credit card, or we could sell it on an enterprise level, a bunch of licenses across a bunch of people. And that would just compound the size of our deals, really help with the NRR numbers, so on and so forth, which is, I think, the dream of every product company and every revenue-based business. So, yeah.
So as you've built this thing and scaled it, what's been like the inflection points, like 100, or like what numbers should we think about? Like a number of employees, revenue, like at what point are you like kind of reconstructing the company again?
Yeah, I think I think of inflection points in terms of product market fit more than I think about them in terms of number of employees and revenue. I think there's a massive shakeup happening right now because of AI, where employee count isn't really a metric. It always was a vanity metric, but it's not really the right metric. Productivity per employee matters a lot with all these agents running around that are highly capable. And, that's where our product has evolved to. And we'll talk about that in a second. And so product market fit is measured by your consistent growth of kind of monthly active users. And, something interesting has happened since the pandemic. There was this kind of oversaturation of SaaS in a lot of businesses. They'd overbought technology, chasing growth at all costs. The cost of capital increased as rates increased. And then AI arrived. And now all of a sudden, businesses are like, okay, we have too much SaaS. And also we have too many people. And when you're selling seat-based SaaS, that might mean you're not necessarily losing logo, but you're churning seats. And you need to really think about the next horizon in terms of AI. And if we step back and think about the evolution of history, and specifically communication technologies, which is the world we exist in, back in the day, you wanted to sell something, you walked up to somebody's farm and, opened your briefcase, and that's how you interacted with them, right? And then the phone was invented, and phone-based sales, complemented the in-person interaction. And then email came along, and then email complemented the phone and the in-person interaction. And then mobile devices came along, and everybody was kind of always connected. And then automation got layered on top of email and these other communication mediums. And then video became a thing because all of a sudden we could stream it via HTML5 and all these other technologies. And, basically the infrastructure that was laid in the 2000s supported the scale and the bandwidth required to do video really effectively. And now we're in this era of AI. And so each of those inflection points really kind of changed the product landscape. And when we started Vidyard, we were moving from this world of on-premise, on-server software to SaaS. Mobile was becoming a thing. And so, we needed to deliver mobile experiences for our customers. And now we're in this world of AI. And so, we think about video embedded on the website, who's watching it for how long. That's the premium video hosting solution that we offer. Then we think about, okay, let sales reps create these amazing stories for customers, screen capture, webcam, etc. Now it's, how can we use everything we've learned, the data around what makes a video successful, and the millions of videos that have been uploaded to our service to try to automate the creation of a video in the ways that matters most. So the way that looks today is we've got this product called the Video Agent. When a customer comes to your website and raises their hand, that might be they watched a video, they inputted their information. We will automatically generate a video from the sales rep that will be assigned to them that says, hey, Clint, got your hand raised. I'm really excited that we got a meeting booked on the calendar because that's all automated now too. On this call, we're going to talk about A, B, and C. And that drops no-show rates by 30% because you've seen someone on the other end. It's AI generated. That doesn't necessarily matter. I was just talking to a CEO of one of our customers who I've never met before, but he's seen my avatar and he's been like, oh my God, I feel like I know you. And so our relationship is now starting from a place it couldn't have started from before, which is text. So I think about inflection points in terms of technologies and audiences and whether or not you have product market fit. And, that's again, back to what YC taught me. Are you building something people love? And you will know that in the metrics. Revenue is, the thing that matters most in a B2B business. It's the measuring stick that gets we're all measured. But that is a byproduct of the value exchange and a high value product that delivers upside for your customers. And that's what we have to be relentlessly obsessed about.
Give me a sense for like your overall thinking of AI and its future in video. I mean, obviously everybody wants to know the answer to this question around even just the future on humanity and where we're going with this thing. So obviously we don't know the answers to that, but give us your overall take on where AI is heading.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think two things. One, that scenario I laid out where the video agent automatically reaches out to a new customer on your behalf and starts to build that relationship and fill that trust battery. That's not something that anybody had time to do before. If you're a business that gets thousands of leads a week, there's no way that your team can do that. They're too busy doing other things, filling in CRM, having actual conversations with customers. And so the way I think about AI in the context of what we deliver is it gives sales reps more time to do the things that matter, like meet their customers in person, meet them live. And it gives another touch point to help them build those relationships. So I see AI as augmenting humans. And there's this funny meme right now, like there's a lot of YC companies that are innovating in areas that are like the things people actually want to do. And there's a bunch of stuff that people don't want to do that deserve automation, right? Like bookkeeping and expense management. No employee wants to do that stuff. Let's go automate that stuff so they can do the more creative work, potentially augmented by AI. So I see a future where AI and humans work really collaboratively together to do the things that matter most. And the things that matter most are the relationships that we can build. Because when you take away the products and you take away the services, what's left in any type of business transaction is that human to human bond and that connection and the trust that gets created. And if you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a technology, you want a human to be accountable to that outcome. Humans are inherently good, right? We have this like moral code, this obligation that's been trained into us. AIs don't necessarily have that. They don't have to have that, right? So that's how I have been thinking about it. In terms of our product, what we've done is remove the friction and make it really easy for our sellers and our users to create video. I think the evolution now has to be making it really easy for viewers to consume that video. Mm-hmm. And that means like chaptering, summarizations, things that can be viewed at a glance. A person was there, created that content, said those things, but how do you digest them faster? Because I think that's what, we as humans are starting to do. So that's where we're starting to think about the future in terms of video-based interaction.
So obviously you didn't stay in Silicon Valley. You went back to Canada. Give us a sense for, which I love, and give us a sense for why you decided you could have stayed in Silicon Valley, right? Like give us a sense for why you're building in Canada. And the benefits and downsides to, obviously we have like this war with you guys now, right? Like
apparently
that none of us actually care about, but, you know what I mean? But like, give us a sense for like the upsides, downsides, and what it's been like building there.
Yeah, for sure. I've always felt like the border is a bit of it's a bit of an artificial line. Like our cultures are not that different in some ways. The thing that, our currencies are very different, right? And we can talk about what that means in terms of arbitrage. But, when we were finishing at YC, we took a look at every single ecosystem where there was startups that had been successful. Waterloo had RIM and BlackBerry, and this kind of long-standing history of big B2B multinational organizations, which meant there was existing talent. It also had the University of Waterloo, which we had all been to. It also had a big Google office that had a YouTube team that we knew we could recruit from. So it ticked a lot of boxes. And, on Forex alone, if Canadian and US salaries are roughly the same on an absolute basis, a Canadian salary is, over the years we've been operating, either at parity or up to 40% cheaper. And so that means every dollar you spend in USD can go a lot farther. Now, when we decided to come home, right, the network, we were close to the dean of engineering. We knew these engineers at Google that we could recruit. Paul Graham pulled me aside and said, Paul Graham, founder of YC, going back to Canada is going to be like climbing Mount Everest with a 10-pound weight on your back. And I didn't realize really the extent of that metaphor. Of course, like when you're at base camp, 10 pounds, not that big of a deal. But when you're like, oxygen deprived near the summit, summit being IPO or exit, getting that black t-shirt, I made something people want. All of a sudden that 10-pound bag or extra weight is a lot more. And I think what that meant is like, there just isn't the same volume of highly successful 0 to 1 billion companies in Canada that there is in the US. It's not even close. Mm-hmm. And so what that means is there's less talent here that has taken something, to $100 million of ARR. And, we didn't really, I think, realize that until we were post Series B, post Series C. And the solution for us was to just, hire more broadly. And so today, only about 50 to 55% of our team is in the Waterloo region. Otherwise, we're pretty highly distributed. I got a really good friend named Marcelo. He's one of the co-founders of a company called Fair, and all of their engineering is here in Waterloo, but their product and go-to-market and business leadership is in Silicon Valley. So yeah, we came back for the engineering talent, but what I would say is I didn't tell our investors I was coming back to Canada because for the first 3 years, I was 2 weeks in the Bay Area, 2 weeks in Waterloo. Mm-hmm. The way I saw it is I'd go to the Bay Area, I'd meet with investors, I'd meet with customers, I'd do some recruiting, and then I'd come back to Canada, go heads down, and we'd build innovation. And then I'd go back to the Bay Area and get inspired again and think bigger, then come back to Canada. And that's really served us well. To be able to run a profitable business at our scale that's now very much innovating in this AI space. I think Canada has afforded us the ability to do that. Government subsidizes R&D. Which is, a blessing and a curse. It creates a lot of zombie companies, but if you're really ambitious, I think it helps fuel that level of ambition. So yeah, I could talk about that a lot. There's a lot of political discourse right now, as you can imagine here. We've got new leadership in Mark Carney that seems really kind of aligned to the tech ecosystem, but we've seen this before. So yeah, talk to me in 4 years.
Well, finally, because I want to be respectful of your time, we end every interview with the same question, and that is at CEO.com. We believe the chances one gives is just as important as the chances one takes. When you hear that, who gave you a chance to get you to where you are today?
That's it's funny. There are so many faces and names that I can think of at every single inflection point that gave us, an amazing opportunity. But in the context of building something people want, I really have to think about our first customer. When we were at Combinator, there was a woman who worked at a company called Tribe HR, and she deeply cared about what we were building because she was trying to automate the onboarding of customers using video. And she assumed we were a much larger company than we were. And every time she had an issue with the product, she'd call the 1-800 number. And number 1 for sales went to my cell phone. Number 2 for general inquiries and press went to my cell phone. Number 3 for support went to my cell phone. So I would always talk to her. She'd call sometimes multiple times a day. And we basically wrote a list on the wall of everything that Donna wanted and needed the product to do. And we'd go deliver that. And then I'd call her. And then eventually, decided we'd go find more people like Donna because she was our ICP. Eventually, when I moved back to Waterloo, I went to this event and I met Donna in person. And I was like, wow, I'd really like to spend more time with her. And we will celebrate our 12th wedding anniversary in August 10th. So
that is incredible. Oh my gosh. That is so cool.
And, I always tell the team, this is what customer success really means, but it doesn't scale very well, especially to thousands of customers. But without her, I don't think we would have built the way we did and what we did because she cared so deeply and her job depended on our success. And that's exactly what you need when you're starting and founding a technology business.
Well, that's amazing. And congratulations. Wow. Nothing better than that. That's incredible. Thanks, Michael. Thanks so much for coming on. Congratulations on everything you've built. We should have you on again because we could talk about all sorts of different topics, but really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Clint. Really appreciate it. Cheers.
Thanks, man.